रिलीज किया है, और इसलिए कुछ सपोर्ट मिला है स्पेशलिटी केमिकल प्राइसेस को। जो हमारे मित्र हैं जो अनलिस्टेड सेक्टर में स्पेशलिटी केमिकल्स बना के एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं, उन्होंने कुछ प्राइस हाइक्स लिए हैं। अगर ये ऐसा सत्य
Okay, welcome everybody, whoever is here. I can't see many people, but I hope this recording will be shared with others. The main intent is basically to discuss the basics of fatigue and fatigue management, and where is the gap? Where have we gone wrong or astray from the ideal, or what is required to protect the interests of the pilot. So to begin with, the orientation needs to be discussed, that the fatigue management or the FTTL is basically made in the interest of the pilot to protect the pilot's rights regarding the health and working hours. In the bigger picture, if you see, we have a number of industries, be it shift workers or non-shift workers. Everybody enjoys certain privileges and certain rights. So there are certain fundamental rights which are assured by the Indian Constitution. And what affects us is the right to sleep. So every individual, like the right to breathe, right to eat, has the right to sleep. And these are not my words, but there's a judgment passed by the Honorable Supreme Court of India in 2011, wherein they have cited the right to sleep as a fundamental right. Now, it cannot be cast in stone that everybody in the world will work from 9 to 5. People will have to go beyond. But when you go beyond, you have to see the repercussions. Which field are we entering into? What are the risks? And we have to, again, basically compensate the risk. So when you're taking higher risk, the safety barriers have to be higher. So what the Supreme Court has said that, yes, there will be reasonable restrictions. So if you want to basically alter the terms of sleep of an individual, which are protected by the Constitution, then there has to be a law for that. A law has to be enacted by the Parliament. Currently, we have a civil aviation requirement on FTTL, which draws its powers from the Indian Aircraft Act, which has been approved by the Parliament. So what basically the Parliament says that we empower the ministry who empowers the DGCA to make rules on fatigue management. But nowhere does it say that we empower the DGCA to take away the right to sleep of the individuals. So when you have to cater for longer flights at night, transatlantic, beyond whatever is prescribed, then it has to be a discussion amongst all the stakeholders. And then it has to be passed as a law to be enacted, not as an executive order, which can be changed at the whims and basically at any point of time it can be changed or put under abeyance, which we have seen. It has been done twice over. So anybody wants to intervene, please do. It's not a monologue. So that is the basis of the sleep. So fatigue is primarily linked with sleep. If your sleep is affected, your circadian rhythm is affected, you will be fatigued, and this fatigue carries over, and basically it accumulates over a period of time. It builds up so much that you're not able to work properly, think properly. Your cognition is affected, and then your physical aspects are affected, which means your motor skills are affected. As a pilot, motor skills and cognitive skills are extremely important. So that's why fatigue has been identified as a big threat. The way we behave and our body works hasn't changed over decades. The first study was done by NASA in 1996. And that said that the maximum flight duty period can be 10 hours. So that was their basis, and that was a scientific study which was backing it. Next study was done by EASA. EASA came out with a MOBIS report 2008, and that also backed 10 hours maximum flight duty period. Again, there was a review in 2016 by a committee of 10 scientists, which again said 10 hours. And this was reviewed by another committee of 3 scientists. Now, we would say that if EASA is working at 13 hours, then what restricts us to 10 hours? So what the scientific committee has said or told EASA what you're doing by implementing 13 hours is against scientific norms. So they only look from the scientific point of view. EASA looks at balancing between commercials and safety. So safety is always a balance between production and protection. Anything in excess is not bad. Too much production means safety is compromised. Too much safety means the airline can go bankrupt. So it is always a balance. So when they took it from 10 hours to 13 hours, they also built safety nets around it. A safety management system, a risk assessment, fatigue risk management system, enhanced rest periods, which are scientifically backed. Now, in the latest edition of the car, which has just been put under abeyance, there were 3 or 4 recommendations or changes which were done. So I have cited in my previous blogs how these recommendations can become detrimental. So more is not always good. More at given time or the appropriate time can be beneficial. For example, if you're given instead of 2 days, 3 days rest. So when does your third day rest complete and your next assigned duty starts? If your assigned duty starts at night, then the probability of fatigue setting in is the highest as per science. Because now you're used to being awake by day and sleeping by night. So your first duty should never be at night. It should be a day flight and gradually transition to night flight. Similarly, when you're approaching the end of your duty block after 5th or 6th day, you should be gradually brought to flying during day and sleeping by night, so that when you have your 2 days off of enhanced rest period, so you're able to take maximum advantage. If you're brought to the rest period at night, around the midnight, you are basically ending up utilizing your rest period in only recovering. So basically, your social aspects and your physical routine, if you have, that is not catered for anywhere. So fatigue risk management system is basically managing how you move through your work cycle and how you interact with your work. Frequent tail swaps, minimum rest, that is again a big thing, because the regulator makes a prescribed duty time limitation. So there has to be buffer. You cannot always work on the limits. Any system which is made has to undergo a pressure test, which means like if you have monsoon or foggy conditions. So those are pressure tests So will your FETL hold out during that time? If you're already working at the limit, then basically you'll be going beyond the limits. So your discretion and extension cannot become the rule. That is the main aspect. There has to be a buffer. It can be only an exemption. So discretion or extension of the FETL cannot become the rule. It can be an exemption. In the writ petition that I've filed in the Delhi High Court, the main thing what I'm saying is 10 hours is what science says. So let 10 hours be the rule and 13 hours be the exemption. If there is anything which anybody has which proves that we can be permitted scientifically to operate more than 10 hours, then there can be a discussion. So there always has to be a discussion amongst the stakeholders. So all this, a committee needs to be formed of experts. So neither am I an expert on fatigue, nor is the regulator an expert on fatigue. The regulator is an expert on policy or rule making. I may be an expert on safety or operations, but the scientists, they are experts in the field of fatigue, and the fatigue cannot be covered by a single person or a single doctor because it involves multiple specialties: endocrinologist, cardiologist, neurologist, psychologist. So all these people have to come together and then decide. So if we do not have our own experts, our own data, then again we'll have to look at others. The closest would be EASA, which has done the maximum scientific study. So either you borrow something from there or build your own. There are two options. But this ad hoc arrangement of tweaking the FETL without scientific basis is not safe, because the International Civil Aviation Organization, which India is a signatory to, the Annex 6 specifies that for fatigue management, there are certain requirements. Firstly, it has to be scientifically based on scientific principles, knowledge based, and based on operational experience. So at present, neither is it scientifically based, nor knowledge based, nor based on operational experience. And last requirement for by mandated by the ICAO is that even if you do prescriptive FETL, leave alone FRMS, which is a far cry, even for prescriptive, the system must undergo a safety risk assessment as per Annex 19, which this clause is completely missing from the car. So that is why when the number of pilots becoming temporarily or permanently unfit, the graph is rising every year, nobody is able to correlate that what is the reason for this rise. So a safety management or an effective safety management system would automatically correlate that there is a rise in TMU, PMU. Is something wrong with our schedules? Why are people becoming stressed? Hypertension, cardiac issues are going high. So there has to be a reason. So the safety management system of the operator has to determine this. And finally, it ends up at the desk of the regulator who takes the final call. So things can be discussed threadbare, but the basis is what is the maximum you can fly. Maximum is 10 hours, because every other industry is 8 hours a day, overtime 10 hours. Science says for aviation 10 hours. Okay. Per week, the FETL permits 60 hours. But what does the science say? WHO and ILO, together they have released a statement or a document which says that in 2016, there have been 745,000 deaths around the globe due to stroke and cardiac issues. And the main reason for that was working for more than 55 hours a week. So this needs to be restricted. My point is simple. When we have data, or we have agencies like WHO, ILO saying, and NASA saying that limit your work to 10 hours and 55 hours a week, then how can we go beyond that 13 hours and 60 hours? So that is where everything gets restricted. So next, later on, we can see what consecutive nights are, how to recover from consecutive nights. For example, what EASA says is that you should get 36 hours of rest, including 2 local nights. And twice in a month, this should be increased to 2 local days. So 2 local days plus 2 local nights. What DGCA has done is they've increased it to 2 nights and 36 hours, but not local days. So that is where they are not adhering to the safety barriers which have been put in by EASA. So you cannot take the good part of EASA, that is 13 hours, which suits you, but what doesn't suit you, giving enhanced rest, you do not take. So both have to go together. So in the safety culture survey, basically in 2020, the first survey was conducted, and that was a general survey that included pilots, cabin crew, engineers, ATC, ground staff. And a couple of issues were identified. One of them was fatigue. So if fatigue is a primary concern, then next what we saw is this is a Likert chart, and fatigue was identified as one of the concerns. In the next survey, which was 22, we did a survey on pilots and their fatigue, that how many pilots are getting fatigued. Is it really an issue? So what came up is 54.2% of the pilots suffer from excessive daytime sleepiness, and 41% of pilots self-assessed moderate daytime sleepiness. 66% of the pilots responded yes to the question if they have fallen asleep without planning or consent of the other pilot, or experienced micro sleep episodes. 71% of the pilots in the survey responded that they have often felt so tired that they shouldn't have been doing cockpit duty. So a lot of data came out from this survey. So next was that if pilots are experiencing fatigue, then what is the reason for the fatigue, the cause? So which was carried out in this survey. And this, if you can see the PMU and TMU data, which is rapidly rising from 2009, which was about 25, to 2021, which was over 200, and 22 again 200. 23 is slightly lesser, 150. So in this survey, basically, a number of questions were asked on how, what is the influence of certain aspects, your environment, your work schedule, stress, on fatigue. Is it directly related to fatigue? It is adding to fatigue or not? So this is the Likert scale, which was built around the results. And all these reds are deep influence, and green is very little influence. Yellow is the moderate influence. So to summarize it, I would say that 84% of the pilots said they're concerned with the speed and direction of the rotation of shift, your working shift. That if it shifts too often, then the body is not able to adjust to the circadian rhythm. So that is why the FRMS basically takes you gradually from day to night and then back to day, and then your rest period. 83% of the pilots are concerned with onset of fatigue due to consecutive night flights. 81% are concerned that with minimum rests and rosters without buffers, fatigue is deeply impacted. 76% of pilots considered increased flight duty a concern. 70% more than 10 hours, which is, as I said, NASA and EASA both have said that is the recommended limit. And there is another interesting study which has been done which correlates your fatigue with the blood alcohol level. So a person who has been awake for 17 hours or more, 17 to 21 hours, the performance of the person is equivalent to another person with a blood alcohol level of 0.05%. So that is more than what is permitted in other countries, even for driving. But DGCA requires and insists on pre and post flight test result of 0.000% breath and alcohol level. So, is it acceptable to the regulator that a person who is fatigued to the extent that their reaction and performance in the cockpit is equivalent to 0.05% blood alcohol level? So there's another interesting case of one Captain Mike Simpkins in the UK, who basically was again flying on minimum rest. In one of the flights, he reported fatigue, which was outstation. And of course, the flight was delayed. All those things happened. When he came back, he was given the marching orders. So he filed a case in the tribunal in UK and won the case. The airline apologized in public. So in one of the hearings, he basically asked the director of operations that will you permit a person with 0.05% alcohol to operate your flight? The director of operations obviously said no. He said, then how can you permit or how can you force or how can you expect me to fly in a state of fatigue which is equivalent to the same? So this is, there are certain basic things which science backs and for which there is no counter. So you cannot push the limit of the human being or the human body beyond a limit that it breaks down or basically the performance level degrades, because you never know at what stage of flight will you be required to act at the controls of the aircraft in facing a situation and be 100% fit mentally and physically to react and bring the aircraft back safely. So if you're already at the fatigue, then in the situation of stress, you will be basically underperforming. This particular survey also had questions about you're flying short haul, medium haul, long haul, and are you married, single, divorced, how many children do you have? So some sort of correlation was drawn, and it is not that bachelors or youngsters between 20 and 26 would like to fly more. It is across the board. Everybody feels that this flying is too much, and the minimum rest between the flights is what is killing them. Because after that, there is the transportation time. In big cities, metros, it is not easy to get back home within 1 hour. It takes longer than that. And then you have to unwind. You cannot switch off. You have to unwind. Like EASA gives certain time for uh, unwinding social aspects. And if the time to your destination or your hotel or house is more than 1 hour, then it has to be catered for or either the airline restricts that you have to stay within 90 minutes of the airport. So something has to be done of that sort. EASA again looks at the nutrition of the pilots. In this survey, or if I may say, uh, flying is the only profession wherein you work simultaneously and consume your food at the same time. You do not get a break. Every industry profession is given a break, a 1 hour break or whatever, to basically disengage from your work, have your meals, and then come back. So basically, you come back with a fresher mind, refreshed, you have your nutrition. So nutrition is an important aspect which is catered for in EASA, which is not there in the current FDTL, which is the 2024. So these aspects were again highlighted in the survey. Fear of reporting fatigue. A number of pilots or have been warned. In the comment section, I can read that even the people at the roster, they threaten pilots that if you report fatigue, then these are the consequences. So better not to report fatigue. And poor support at work. A few pilots have been fired for reporting fatigue. That if there is a schedule or a series of flights that I'm supposed to undertake, and I warn you beforehand that this is likely to cause fatigue, and if the operator doesn't do anything, I still report fatigue, then action is taken against me. So this sends out the wrong signals to the industry. What is important is to build trust so that there is free and fair exchange of ideas, dialogues. But here we are creating barriers by telling the pilots that if you report fatigue, these are the consequences. And we do not have actual data based on which the regulator can take any action or revise. It's like the police. The police will say that there is no crime happening because nobody is reporting it. But there is still, people know. Similarly, fatigue is there. People are experiencing fatigue, but they are not filing fatigue reports because of the fear or the consequences of filing fatigue reports. There was something about tail swaps I've already spoken about. And this is a graph. Not much research has happened on multiple takeoffs and landings. I could find only one wherein on the vertical you have your response time and horizontal is the time of the day or the hours you have spent. So this black is sleep deprivation, night shift. The red is the multiple segment. So multiple segment, your performance basically goes down as compared to day shift, which is in yellow. And single segment is in blue. So it is not that no studies have been done. So again, I'm saying that what needs to be done is experts have to be called in who have in-depth knowledge of the subject like this, and they can help prepare an FTTL which is favoring both. Fatigue risk management system is difficult to implement because a lot of training and all is involved. But what the operator needs to understand is it is beneficial for both. Currently, what the operator thinks is that we'll have to give more rest, which means we'll have to hire more people to do the same job. But for example, in fatigue risk management system, you can go beyond the prescriptive limits, which is if you want to operate a flight which is longer, you can give the pilot more rest before the flight and after the flight, but go beyond the limits to meet your schedule. So basically, you are able to operate the flight rather than sending extra crew, additional crew. The same crew can operate the flight, but you give certain additional rest before and after the flight. This is practiced in a lot of airlines which have been doing fatigue risk management system right from Australia, Singapore, Europe. So it has been seen that there is an advantage or benefit to both the airlines and the pilots. And this switching flights, FTP increasing towards the end, they should be decreasing ideally. Frequent tail swaps, minimum rest, travel time, and discretion of FTP. So, like I said, discretion should be an exception, not the norm, which is currently. And there are about 177 comments, which will take time to go through. But if you download it from the website, you can obviously have a good look at what people are feeling. And it is not that fatigue is not there. Worldwide, pilots are reporting fatigue, not just in India. There have been a number of surveys done in the UK, the BALPA, the IFALPA, and other leading organizations have carried out surveys. It has been identified as a big threat. But we are waiting for ICAO to step in. So primary concern is that WHO, ILO, they're also UN bodies. When one UN body is saying that you cannot or you should not work more than 55 hours, then ICAO should come in and put in a limit. Rather than waiting for the operator will not do. Ideally, the operator's safety management system should have restricted automatically. But clearly, there's a failure in the safety management system, which is again and again failing to pick up that there is a problem here. So there's certain myths which I have busted in 3 videos, which are again on the blog. So, risk of excessive duties, debunking pilot flight duty limits, hidden dangers of fatigue. Only a law can alter the terms of sleep. So, these are certain podcasts and videos that I've made so that people are educated on the subject. Because right now, or in the FTTL, which came in earlier, everybody was excited that yes, we are getting more rest, more rest. But that more rest can be detrimental. If your flight after an extended period of rest starts in the morning or during daytime, so that is beneficial rather than starting in the evening. So your 36 hours which end up in the afternoon, so you could end up doing a flight in the evening which terminates at midnight or beyond. If you look at EASA or the scientific study in EASA, the facts say that late night arrivals are more fatiguing than early morning departures. Yes, circadian rhythm is disturbed if there is a departure at 5 o'clock or if you wake up at 5 o'clock. But that is better than arriving late at night. So that is why EASA curtails the duty limits from 5 o'clock in the evening. It brings it down. So your peak 13 hours is limited to your daytime. From 5 onwards, it becomes 11 hours. And if you at night, if you want to do more than 10 hours, then there has to be a FRMS. Now, ICAO says that to implement FRMS, the training and the level of your operator and the regulator must be at a higher level. Otherwise, it can be detrimental. So you have to understand the effects and how to implement. And it is like any other safety management system. If SMS has failed or not been implemented in India, then most likely FRMS will also fail. So there is no point for going for a system which,
Amit?
yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that whatever you've been speaking about it is basically the relevance of data which you have given to us. However,
Hmm.
in actual practice, in an airline scenario where the corporates are the ones who rush for profits, there's very less room for safety, because the safety department in any airline today is just a paper tiger. It can snarl, it can show its teeth, but that too only for the pilot community. Nobody else gets affected by it, and it's very unfortunate but reality. You ask any flight safety fellow in private, and he will tell you that he cannot prevail over a commercial aspect. So
Correct.
unfortunately, it is a reality. And what I have been observing is that the traveling public, the people who are actually in the line of fire, because a fleet pilot is an actually a ticking time bomb, you know. And with the traffic increasing, the airspace becoming smaller with more aeroplanes in it, and fatigue going on, I think it's a recipe for disaster. One must be very proactive. The judges of this country, the people in DGCA, the people in the airline, they need to understand that one unfortunate incident will bring down our ratings in the world. The airline will lose its license and things like that. But people are just not looking beyond the nose. It's like the elephant in the room, but nobody wants to look at it. It's just pushed under the carpet. I wonder why, but that's how it is. Probably the commercial considerations, and as you put it across, that you require more pilots then, so you'll have to hire more people. The salary bills will go up. But I don't know, in the long run, if you want profits, you want the aviation to grow, you want the airlines to grow, I think it comes as a part and parcel of the industry, isn't it? So why can't people on top understand this? Is my question.
So what I've seen is that the people on top, they have a very myopic vision or short-term gains. Everybody wants to book profits for the next year and show that we have made so much profit. So safety is not a profit center. Safety is a loss preventer. So what safety fails to do is they have to put it across in terms that how much have we saved by preventing loss and investing in safety systems. So nobody has put in a value after an accident, aircraft accident, what was the loss? So it is not the hull loss which is covered. So more than 60% of your losses are uninsured and intangible, like your loss to reputation. You cannot put a value to that. So you have to put a value after an accident. Your traffic drops because loss of reputation, that you were not safe. So that is not catered. Everybody is looking for the hull loss, that we got the insurance money. So that is only 20 or 30% of your total loss. People work overtime after an accident. There are diversions, your aircraft shortage, people have to be rescheduled. So all there's so many things. So it's the loss preventer. So people at top need to understand that is why safety management system is mandatory for everybody, from right from the CEO, which nobody does. So none of the CEOs or the regulator, anybody who signs a policy must have undergone a safety management system course to understand all these aspects. So if they have not undergone, so for them it is any other thing. What does it matter from 10 hours to make 13 hours? Let it be 14 hours. So that is how the game is played. So
No, but
ultimately,
then.
then you have to fall back. That's why what I'm doing is that if you can't understand safety, then you fall back on science, because science
Hmm.
is the minimum. But if you want to go beyond science, then you have to have a deep understanding of safety and responsibility. You have to be a mature operator and a mature regulator. If you can't be a mature operator regulator, then you stick to what science says, 10 hours. Simple. So that the milords have to understand that what is at stake. Right now, technology is saving a lot of incidents, accidents from happening. Pilots are
Absolutely.
undergoing micro sleeps, and people are being nodding off at the final approach, because at the final approach, when you're fully configured, you have nothing much to do. And below 1,000 feet, if you're not doing anything, then the likelihood of your going asleep is very high. So there are two pilots. So fortunately, both the pilots are not affected by this or may not be affected, and we have autopilots. So the safety systems are such that an accident or incident is not happening. It is not that the risk is not there. The risk is increasing by the day. So when will it reach the brink or the breaking point? So that is what the regulator needs to see. So they have put the blinkers on that we don't want to see. Till something happens, we won't do anything. So that is in safety, that is called a pathological culture, that we will hide the data or we won't do till something happens, rather than proactive or generative, wherein
So then where
everybody
does
feels
it lead us?
responsible.
Where does it lead us all to? Again, back to square one. Because the person who's supposed to take the shot, take the call on these issues, is not doing it. Even the
Yeah, so
regulator is
that's
saying
why
we are,
the courts have to decide now.
reactive, not proactive.
So the courts have to decide uh, because the other two pilot bodies, they are fairly okay with the current FTTL. They say, okay, only the implementation date is the issue. But I say the basics, the foundation is so weak that after 6 months, the regulator might decide, okay, let's change it again. What can you do? So unless it is a law, which the Supreme Court has said that it has to be a law has to be passed by the parliament, and the law has a certain procedure. Again, it involves all the experts and stakeholders. So you cannot unilaterally change anything. So that is why it has to be done through a proper process. So the writ petition will address these issues, and hopefully safety will take precedence and not commercial. So public needs to know, because public is currently going with the fears. So if you see any accident in India or outside, there's a dip in the traveling public, the fares, and then it bounces back. So if you give public slightly discounted fares, so they'll come back. But airlines like Japan Airlines, even after the 350 accident, they have been given an award by the Flight Safety Foundation recently, last week, I think, for their systems. They post every accident occurrences on their website. The public has the right to know how safe we are, because they are the major stakeholders and the business runs on them. So we cannot keep basically uh, make them devoid of this the particular data we have. So transparency has to be there. ICAO is uh, calling for transparency, and what we have is that our investigations are closed door and we do not disclose any data. So either you let us participate in the accident investigation so that we can contribute, you can learn, everybody learns, and share the information rather than keeping it hidden or not revealing. So many accident reports are there which are not revealed. So collectively, there have been certain committees which were formed, but those committee reports do not come out. So ultimately, before approaching the courts, you have to try all your options. So all options have been exhausted. That is why we have reached the court. And then now the judges have to take a call on the merit of the case rather than succumbing under pressure.
But do you think it will happen? I mean, going by the way things are, because the law is as they say, requires evidence, and evidence proves that everything is safe, hunky dory. So where does one
No. So
stop
if
playing?
law goes by evidence, then you see the regulator does not have any shred of evidence. If I say 10 hours is the rule, NASA says, EASA says, and this is the data, the regulator does not have anything which proves that 13 hours is backed by science. Because ICAO says it has to be scientific, knowledge based operational experience. So the regulator can say basically that we are taking the international best practices of 13 hours. But then that 13 hours comes with all that baggage. You take that baggage also. You cannot leave the safety baggage behind and take only the 13 hours, which is being done right now. So if you look as per data says 10 hours. So they have to answer what is the reason for going to 13 hours and what is the safety net here. So if it is argued on scientific facts, which is what ICAO says, so I don't know. There is no other recourse but to stick to 10 hours and 55 hours a week. That's the long and short. Rest, long haul, short haul, number of landings can be discussed because beyond 10 hours, science says that the probability of accident increases 20 times. So when science is saying this, then I give the example of the breath analyzer, the uh, blood alcohol level, equivalence of 0.05. So I don't know how basically it can go against us unless somebody purely refuses. So I'm not asking for much. I say the experts decide. Let the expert decide, but experts have to be identified. The regulator is not an expert in science. Even when a Supreme Court or the High Court wants an independent uh, expert opinion, they call for, if they want something on handwriting, they want handwriting experts. Something on medicine, they want independent medicinal experts. They won't go for the regulator, because regulator policymakers, not scientists. So in first week of August, or the second week of August is the hearing. So I hope it goes well and progresses, which means there are arguments and counter arguments. Let the facts be put on the table, and then a decision be made, rather than only stating that we are the best and nothing has happened. So we're not waiting for a disaster, then we will do something. The job of the regulator is to be proactive and predictive.
But the
So from
reality
this,
is that we are only reactive as a nation,
yeah,
as generally in terms of safety. Generally, if you look around, also we are only reactive. We are not proactive. So this is the psyche of the diaspora, which has using the facilities, or I would say, I mean, aviation is on the background, the backbone of the entire economy, the progress of the country. But unfortunately, it's not being given. The safety is not being given its due. So I have really no idea. I'm very lost for words. That it is so simple,
that is in
but
any
it's
industry,
so difficult to make
because
people understand in the higher, even for that matter, the ministry, the government of India. Nobody talks about it because it doesn't care. Because if some people from the top, come and give out a few statements, it will make a difference. I'm sure, because the law also then wakes up and says, oh, things are coming from there. We better use our mind and heart now to get to the get to a good solution. Take the middle path. I should say safety has no middle path. You cannot
safety
compare
is,
safety to anything.
yeah. So when somebody says safety first, so that is the wrong statement. So safety is in every system.
Yeah.
It is not first or last. It is there everywhere. So whatever you do has to be. So there's a prime example of Alcoa. Alcoa is the biggest aluminum company in the US. So uh, there was a CEO who came in new. He was a Secretary of State. Then he became the CEO of Alcoa. So in the first board meeting, he only spoke about safety, safety, safety. Nothing about profits. All the shareholders were surprised. What is happening? Normally, everybody comes and starts saying that we will double the profits, we'll do this, we'll increase the dividends. But he never spoke anything about money. He said we have to minimize losses to zero, because if we cater for this zero loss, then money is obviously coming in. Productivity will increase, and obviously you'll get more money. but our focus should be on safety. Even the management guru Peter F. Drucker, he said the main objective of any business is not profit maximization but prevention of loss. If you prevent that, their profits will automatically come. Money will come. The losses, one loss, like we say, one diversion, all your profits are gone. You should be basically balancing between profit maximization and loss. But so there are certain examples, and there are certain examples like the Challenger and all, wherein for a few dollars, the whole machine was blown, the oil rig. So the management, we call it deference to expertise. There are certain things which should be deferred to experts. So the management cannot do everything, like safety assessment. So they cannot do all that. They should leave it to the experts.
Well, I hope that
Yeah.
you get your. I mean, we are all with you, but and that the
No, we have
law
to take it
is,
to the last stage. We have to
yeah, but the
conclude
law
it
is
somewhere.
very tedious and
Yeah.
time consuming, painstaking process in India. I don't
But
know.
that
By
is
the
the last
time I
step.
hope,
That is the last hope. After that,
I
there is
know.
no hope.
Yeah, I know.
Unless somebody
Anyway,
strong comes up on top and says that no, everybody has to pull up their socks. Nothing
yeah.
doing.
I mean, imagine,
But
yeah,
then
we
he
were on
has
the
to have
brink
money.
of getting the new FDTL, and DG says, no, we are not backing down, not backing down till the last day. And the next
Hmm.
day they said turncoats. They said everybody knew that this would happen. Everybody knew it would happen, but we thought that okay, maybe it's a miracle which will happen in the Indian scenario. But miracles don't happen here. They don't care.
There, anything can happen. So
I
under
know.
pressure, you can change any regulation.
Yeah, I
So
know.
that trust will never be built. Everybody will
Never,
be.
never, 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 never,
So
never.
first step has to be taken from top to build trust.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I said. No? So even if
Hmm.
this the civil aviation ministry or the PMO or somebody talks about fatigue and things like that, it actually doesn't matter because I think 2 or 3% of the entire Indian public travels by air. However, one small crash and it's all over the front page. So it's
Hmm.
very it's I don't know what should I say.
So if you
Otherwise, you
say
don't care. But
railways,
if something happens, then it's all over.
railways, what happens or has been happening, accidents and all. The railway minister just made a statement that in the month of June, the loco pilots, as they are called,
Huh.
their average working hours was 8 hours per day, and they are working towards reducing their fatigue because they have a number of issues. So when they have come down to international levels of 8 hours, so why are the pilots sticking? So there has to, you cannot have industries working at different levels without a justification. If
I know.
the we have a safety act which says that maximum you can work 8 hours a day. So how are we going beyond that act? So there is no act backing the car.
Yeah, I
So
know. I mean, there are so many things that people staying in big cities like Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, and all. We know that the time for transport has been determined as 45 minutes.
hmm,
Where on earth, from any point to any point, can you reach the airport in 45 minutes? You just tell me. Unless you're staying, on the localizer hut at the airport, you can't reach. So it's all fast. It's all fast.
yeah, yeah,
Time of the
it's
day,
worked. It's worked
So there's
backwards
so many things
basically
which
to
are
suit you.
factored in, and oh, if you don't come on time, we'll report it. It'll be called.
Yeah.
All the delay will be on you. Then where everybody says, okay, captain ke upar dal do delay. So it's just very too much of pressure. Too much of pressure on on the pilot. Too much of pressure.
Hmm. So after the armed forces, pilot stress is the next.
So they say the maximum stresses of a coal miner. The second is a fighter pilot, and the third is an airline pilot. That's how the. I mean, I read it sometime back. I may be wrong actually, but this is how
No, it
the
is one
degree
of the
of,
highest in
yeah,
the.
yeah. So but then that's the statistics.
Yeah, because the problem is no pilot will come out in the open and stick the head out.
Yeah,
So only data can speak. So this is one of the ways that data can be put across, because this job is of the regulator to ask people
true.
that
Mm,
how are you doing? Are you doing well? But if the regulator is not doing, then the NGO is doing. So at least the data is with the public. Only the traveling public is not aware. So somehow they need to be made aware that your pilot is not, or is not in the best physical and mental health.
I know.
So that fear is not there. And that is
Yeah,
another subject. When does fear set in? So if you're looking from far, sitting behind, fear doesn't set in until the aircraft bounces up and down. Then the fear sets in. Little bit of turbulence. Then they start thinking, what is the pilot doing? Is he
I know.
sleeping?
True, true.
Yeah, then you tell him, oh
But
yes,
anyway,
he
it
was
all
sleeping actually.
whatever you're doing, it is going to be, in the long run helpful for the airlines, the public, the pilot community, everybody. I don't know. This is a win-win situation for everybody. I really don't
Yeah,
understand
that's what.
where there's a conflict. There should
Hmm,
be no conflict. Safety
correct.
is everybody's business, not just
Hmm,
the pilot. It's everybody's
hmm,
business. So
yeah.
let's see.
Okay,
वगैरह. चलो ठीक है फिर. It was a nice.
we'll carry on till the end.
Yeah, take care then. Take care. Bye
Right.
bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.